A friend of mine challenged me to pick my top 5 photos of 2017, and let me tell you, that was a very difficult challenge. Matter of fact, I failed. I couldn't pick only 5. I picked 10 plus 2. I'm going to share these images with you today, and in the process, I'm going to tell you what was going through my head when I took them, kind of the backstory behind the picture. I'm going to tell you what gear I used and why, and what settings I used and why. So come on, let's go check out those images. The first image to make the list is this crazy alligator shot. This image was captured at Circle B Bar Reserve during the peak of alligator mating season. Not exactly a good time to be at this location. In fact, my son and I stumbled upon 2 large male alligators fighting and competing for territory. It was a completely frightening experience that I will never forget. Back to the image though. I saw this alligator far off in the lake and I could see that it had something in its mouth, so I started watching it very closely. It swam really close, tilted its head up, and threw its prize into the air, and I fired off a few shots. I was using my Nikon D500 paired with the Nikkor 200-500 with a shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second and an aperture of 7.1. The shutter speed was fast enough to freeze the movement, and the aperture of 7.1 created the perfect depth of field. The sun rising just behind the alligator created that nice golden backlight. I wish I could have captured the sound of the catfish being eaten because it was chilling. I still remember the look on my son and nephew's face when they heard the sound of bones being crushed. It was a priceless experience, and this image brings me right back to the moment in time. This next shot is the beautiful Crested Caracara. This image was captured in Vieira wetlands, and I was really surprised by how close this bird let me get. I got down on a lower level in order to get that nice blue sky behind the bird, and that helped make the perfect contrast and soothing background for the image. I was using the D500 paired with the 200-500. I had a shutter speed of 1/2500th of a second just in case the bird decided to fly, and I chose an aperture of 6.3, which proved to be just perfect in this situation and provided the perfect depth of field which captured the entire bird in nice sharp focus. This is one of my favorite birds, and this shot really gives you a good look at this beautiful creature. I mean, look at that beak. It looks like it's made from chrome. And check out the top of the head. This bird looks like it's wearing either a hairpiece or a beret or some kind of fancy hat. I'm sure you noticed the bands on the yellow legs too. I shared this image on social media where the bird was identified by its bands, and I was told this bird is approximately 14 years old. This shot just makes me smile because I managed to capture the attitude of the blue jay. If you're not familiar with this bird, it can be somewhat of a bully at local parks and on bird feeders. It's one of the larger songbirds in the area, so it's never afraid to throw its weight around. And in case you haven't noticed, each bird here already has a peanut, but yet they still want to fight. This is typical blue jay behavior. These birds were really hard to capture because they move so fast, but the D500 managed this shot well. I used the Nikkor 200-500 with a shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second. I think if I had chosen a faster shutter speed, I would have captured the bird's wings in perfect focus, but either way, I'll take it. This is another shot that always puts a smile on my face. I mean, look at this bird. This was one proud young brown pelican who managed to capture quite a large fish. When I first noticed this bird, it was facing the other way, and I almost walked right by it, but then it turned its head and gave me this look, and I couldn't believe my eyes with that fish sticking out like that. This is also from one of my first outings with the incredible Nikon D850. I'll put a link to the original video here. I was shooting at f8 and using a slower shutter speed of 1/125. And this allowed me to shoot at ISO 64, which helped produce a really beautiful, clean image. I don't think this was taken handheld. I believe I was using a tripod at this time, but I could be wrong. This shot was taken at Big Cat Rescue in Tampa, Florida, immediately after this incredibly beautiful lion showed us who was boss by roaring for a good minute or so. And that is yet another chilling experience that I will never forget. Big Cat Rescue is the largest cat rescue facility in the United States, and I was lucky enough to get a tour there. It was an incredible experience. If you're a big cat lover, I highly recommend it. This was shot with the Nikon D810 and the Tamron 150-600 version 1, and I couldn't be happier with the results. Being that this king was in the shade, I lowered my shutter speed to get a little more light in the camera, and for an ISO of 1600, I think this shot came out great. Oh yes. Burrowing owls. Who wouldn't enjoy spending time with owls that live in the ground? What an incredible creature that is always so full of character. For some reason, this shot reminds me of the droids from the Star Wars universe with those nice round heads. And I really like the backlighting in this too. This image was captured with the D500 and the 200-500. I used an aperture of f9 to get a wider depth of field because I wanted to make sure the owl's entire head was in perfect focus. Here's a link to the original video. Go check it out if you have time. It was a great experience. The Dry Tortugas, a tiny island chain 70 miles west of Key West. Another place I highly recommend for just about every reason you could ever think of. Talk about tropical paradise. This place is it. And if you're a birder, the amount of birds that seek refuge at this location during the various migration periods is second to none. I even managed to capture 3 magnificent frigate birds in this shot. You can see them soaring up there in that blue sky. I used the D810 with the impressive Nikkor 20mm 1.8 lens, one of my favorites. As you can tell from this image, this lens does not disappoint. I used an aperture of f9 to get a nice wide depth of field and a shutter speed of 1/320th. This helped me keep the ISO at 64, which created a nice clean image. This is one of those images that I could just get lost in. There's just so much going on. You have those towering storm clouds off in the distance, the leading lines of the moat and the foot trail on the right, the boats and the airplanes for perspective, and those incredibly beautiful blue waters. Here's a link to the original video where I captured this image and much more. From the incredible blue waters of the Dry Tortugas to the magnificent Smoky Mountains of North Carolina, where I found all sorts of great stuff, including this magnificent 7-point bull elk. Elk are often classified by the number of points their antlers have, and this big boy has 7, which would put him up there as an imperial bull elk, one of the largest classifications. I used the Nikon D500 and the 200-500 handheld. You'll notice that I didn't even need to zoom in. This shot was taken at 200 millimeters from the safety of my truck. The sun was close to setting, so there wasn't much light to work with. This forced me to use a really fast shutter speed of 1/125th of a second and an aperture of 6.3. Here's a link to the original video where we found this elk and so much more. I've taken a lot of shots of ospreys, but this one is still my favorite. You get a good shot of those big talons, but the look on this bird's face is what makes the picture for me. An eagle was flying over and this osprey was just a little bit upset because eagles will often fly in and try to steal the osprey's food. This osprey was giving that eagle the stink eye. The image was taken at Vieira Wetlands using the D500 and the Nikkor 200-500. I cropped the image to give it the vertical or portrait look. This brought the subject of interest center stage. Here's a link to the original video, another really incredible experience. The day the frog got away. I was very lucky the day I got this shot. It was a matter of being in the right place at the right time. This tricolored heron was busy feeding on all sorts of stuff, but this frog was the highlight of the day. When the bird grabbed the frog screamed just like a small child, and the bird got freaked out and dropped it. The frog lived to see another day, and the bird decided it was time to eat something else. I used the Nikon D500 paired with the Nikkor 200-500. I used a shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second and an aperture of f8. This proved to be the perfect combination to capture this moment in time. Here's a link to the original video where I had my best bird photography day yet. The reflection. I waited a very long time to capture an image like this, and conditions have to be just right in order to get a shot like this. You need good light and no wind in order to get a great reflection, which in turn gives you a really awesome perspective of what's going on under the bird's wing. The really cool thing about this type of situation is the fact that the smooth surface of the water reflects all that light back up onto the bird, eliminating almost all of the shadows. If the surface of the water was rippled, it would have scattered the light in several directions, making that golden color on the bottom of the bird much less obvious. This was shot at the Vero Beach wastewater treatment plant just after sunrise using the Nikon D500 and the Nikkor 200-500. I was using a shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second and an aperture of 7.1. This helped freeze the action while creating a wide enough depth of field to capture the entire bird and that awesome reflection. If I had to pick just one image, this would be it. This is my favorite shot from 2017 for so many reasons. The chick in the shot was born on my birthday, and I spent the better part of 3 months following the sandhill crane family around. I took hundreds of images of the family and captured hours of great video footage. I squeezed it all into a 30-minute documentary that taught me so much about these incredible birds, and it is an experience that I will never forget. Here's a link to that documentary, The Sandhill Crane Story. Thanks for joining me on this. If you had a favorite of all those images, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to click that subscribe button right over there if you haven't already subscribed. I got a bunch of cool stuff planned and coming up. Don't forget to click the thumbs up either. And I'm challenging you as well. If you're a photographer and you took a lot of images in 2017, try to pick your top 5. It's very, very difficult. And if you want to, you could share those top 5 on, I don't know, social media, and you can tag me in those so I can go check them out. Again, thanks for coming, and I'll leave like my Instagram and Facebook stuff in the description below so that you can tag me in your images. See ya.